Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Nutritional Revolution podcast. We have a rock star athlete for you guys. We have Maddy Price. She's a professional sprinter, athlete, mental health advocate, and mentor to girls in sport, and a Canadian Olympian. She helped lead the women's 4x400 meter relay team to a fourth place finish at the Tokyo 2020 Olympics. And she was raised right here in my backyard, the California Bay Area, and currently lives in North Carolina, where she's volunteer coaching for the Duke track and field team. And she's a speaker for corporations and schools and trains full-time for the 2023 World Champs and Paris 2024 Olympics. Thank you so much for joining us, Maddy.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm stoked to be here.
Yes. So we got connected with Maddy because she is a voice in sport, athlete, expert, and the connection is perfect. She's got the background in the sport at a very high level, so we get to dive into all things about her background, how she got into it. But before we get to learn too much about Maddy, we are going to dive into her two truths and a lie. So go ahead and tell us your three kind of things, and don't tell us which one is the lie.
Yeah, perfect. I won't tell you which one's the lie. Okay. So my three things. Number one is that I have 3 Bernese mountain dogs, and each one is named after a city. My oldest one is named Brooklyn. Okay. Number 2 is that I was so close to peeing my pants when I lined up against Allison Felix when I was a sophomore at Duke University in the 4x4. Wow. Like this close to pee my pants. Ended up racing again in the Tokyo Olympics. I have a 1973 Alfa Romeo vintage car in my garage right now. Cool. Because my dad used to race cars.
Oh my goodness.
Those are my 3.
Okay, amazing. So, I'm going to guess the lie, but again, don't tell me the answer, and we'll reveal at the end. And you said you live in North Carolina right now. I'm just thinking, Burmese mountain dogs are big. What kind of environment do those fit in? Based off of the bios we've read about you, I feel like the classic car thing could be very much a true thing. Peeing your pants, I could fangirl and pee my pants. So I feel like that might be accurate. I'm going to go with the Burmese mountain dogs as a lie, but again, don't tell us the answer. We will reveal it for our listeners at the end. So why don't we jump back a ways? And as we dive into all this, some of the two truths and a lie might be revealed, but we'll see as we go. How did you get into running? Like what, drove you to that sport?
Yeah, I was actually chatting with my mom about this the other day and was talking about how grateful I was that my mom and dad put my sister and I in like every sport imaginable, everything from like ballet to motocross to lacrosse, basketball. Like it was incredible. And it was just so awesome that they sort of allowed us to try everything. Mm-hmm. And so later on, as I was in middle school, was playing soccer, a soccer coach saw a little bit of speed in me, said, hey, why don't you come out for cross country, for track? So tried it out, just ended up loving running with my friends, getting to chat, like running through the trees with cross country. It was so fun. And then once we tried out sprinting, I just loved that like exhilaration of getting to kind of race the girls next to me, race myself, kind of race the clock. And I think my dad did race cars professionally. So that sort of speed that he chased and that he loved also was something that I sort of developed, and it was my own way of sort of getting to race and getting to feel that speed on the track. So just kind of progressed from there into high school. Still played a bunch of sports in high school, played basketball all the way until my junior year. But track sort of started to take over as something I got better at, and then 2, just grew my love for the sport as well.
Yeah, that's amazing. Were either of your parents athletes?
So yeah, my mom actually ran track, I think in middle school and a little bit in high school in Canada. And then my dad did kind of every sport growing up and was a professional race car driver and motocross as well for a long time. So he was one of the first Canadians to finish this race called the Paris Dakar, which is 7,000 miles across the African desert. It's insane. So it was cool to be kind of young and seeing him train for these big events, and have injuries, and just like, I couldn't have asked for honestly a better example to watch growing up of like what that sort of resiliency looks like in high performance.
That's amazing. Amazing. So out of high school, you come to college. Did you get a scholarship to do track?
Yeah. So I got a partial to go to Duke University, which was incredible. Yeah. I think obviously being a little bit far from home in California, but I think both my parents sort of pushed my sister and I to say, if you have the opportunity to go far away and try something new, then like you should go for it. So it was awesome to be out in North Carolina and run at Duke. Had an amazing 4 years here. The 4x4 team sort of became a family. It was incredible to be with them. So,
oh, that's awesome. And so I read in one of your bios too, you had an injury leading up to the Olympics. Can you tell us kind of that journey, that story? What happened? What was the timeline in relation to when you were supposed to be racing? Did you make it to the Olympics? Like, give us the lowdown.
Yeah, no, it was kind of craziness during this time. Leading into the Olympics, I graduated from Duke in 2018. So 2019 was my first professional year on the track, where I made my first World Championships team, which was a huge deal. Was sort of honestly battling through some injuries at that point in my foot. Then leading into Tokyo and into that 2020 Olympic year, developed a stress fracture in my navicular, which is a small bone in your ankle. And so that stress fracture in that bone didn't get a lot of blood supply. It was in the boot for kind of a week or 2 rounds of 6 to 8 weeks. It healed, but didn't fully heal. So as we were leading into this Olympic year, sort of came up with talking to doctors about, okay, surgery seems like a good bet to make sure that this bone is strong and healed and it doesn't come back a year later when I need to be peaking and ready to try and qualify for the games.
Right. Wow.
Like simultaneously when this was happening, the global pandemic hit. So it was a crazy, like weird blessing in disguise that now I had an extra year or so to train and to heal from this injury. Instead of being right on top of the Olympic year. So I had the surgery, was able to recover, did so much rehab. I swam a lot. I cycled a lot. Just had an amazing team around me and just like progressed step by step, day by day. Definitely still a lot of tears, I would say. Of course.
Oh my goodness. Yeah.
It's just, when you have that surgery and when you're that close to like making a dream a reality and you have something like this set you back, there's so much uncertainty and there's so much unknown. On top of the pandemic, which gave us all immense uncertainty.
My God, yes.
So I think I just thought about controlling the controllables, something that my coach always says and still says to this day. What can I do today to just help move me forward? What can I control right now? Can't control my competitors, can't control how fast my bone is healing. I mean, certain things I can, but it's going to have to heal on its own. And so we just keep moving forward.
I love that. That brings up the whole athlete mental health advocate for sure, arena. Tell me kind of how do you get involved in that? What are some ways you help maybe spread that message or help kind of encourage athletes to maybe seek out mental health, or what does that look like?
Definitely. I think it's gone in waves, I think, throughout my whole career. And I think with many athletes, it's the same type of thing. And in dealing with that injury and then in dealing with the loss of my dad when I was in college, he passed away from cancer about 6 months after I missed my first Olympic team. And so dealing with that loss and grief, and then this kind of injury, and then even post-Olympic blues after the Olympics, definitely had some depression, anxiety after the Olympics. So at all these different phases of my life, dealing with these different kind of mental health issues, battles, struggles, whatever you want to call it, just made me realize and know that so many other people are going through the same thing. Like, you're not alone in that. And so how can I be open with other athletes, kind of have these conversations at the track, whether it's with the Duke athletes that I'm coaching now, how can I pull them aside, just check in how they're doing, conversations about the race that's coming up, or how they're managing their stress off the track, all those different things. So, and then voice in sport, mentoring these younger girls virtually and having these check-ins and figuring out, giving them some tools that have helped me, whether that's some mindfulness, reflection, writing down your fears, writing down things that you can control, all these tools and resources that have helped me kind of battle through those times, and I know can help them as well.
Yeah, I think those are definitely helpful tools. So, I mean, talking about the Olympics, that's something I've heard a lot from athletes, is you're just like building up to this like point in time. And then that time comes. And then if you do really well, yes, there's maybe an extension of that high and that joy, but eventually there's a come down. Or if you don't do well, it's like all of this maybe, thoughts of like, you've built up all this work and training to this certain point in time, and then now you didn't perform maybe how you wanted to. How, following the Olympics, did you use some of those tools you just mentioned, or how did you kind of manage that post Olympics blues?
Yeah, it was a challenge. I think one of my teammates and best friends on the Olympic team, Alicia Brown, she sort of warned me a little bit of like, because she had been to Rio, of, hey, like when you get back, it's going to be a little bit of a challenge. Like definitely there's this high of, we ended up getting fourth, which was incredible, but also a little bit bittersweet and heartbreaking because we were so close to a medal. But we ran the fastest any Canadian team had run in 30 years and really executed the best that I think we could have on the day. So there wasn't a lot of, I think, not regret, but there wasn't a lot of feeling like we could have done more walking away from that. So that was really special that we were able to have that performance. But regardless, when you sort of come back after honestly 5 years and definitely the year or two of really intense training leading into the Olympics, I just felt so burnt out. Like I could not get off the couch. I knew I wanted to start training again, but like couldn't quite bring my body or my mind or even my kind of soul to get myself to push that hard again. So I think what really helped me pull myself out of that was talking to a sports psychologist and mental health professional. It was being open with friends and family so that they could also sort of assist in this, whether that was like, let's go get a coffee, let's go like get out of the house and sort of have these accountability partners and people around you to help support you. And then just like investing in rest and recovery, like actual restful things. Like I like watching TV, I like watching movies, but that wasn't super restful for me, right? Like what felt restful at the time was like walking my dog in nature and being outside, like those types of things. So I think it was just making an action plan of what are the things that I love, how can I utilize a support system to help bring me out of this place and into kind of feeling like myself again.
Yeah, that's really incredible. And I mean, it makes me think of too, just like all the probably like neurochemicals and like the release in the brain and just how that changes. I mean, there's probably just a huge like dump of all these like feel good chemicals, right? When you're at the Olympics, and then it's like you're saying, your system's kind of burnt out, probably from a physical training perspective, like your body physically needs rest, but then mentally there's this kind of burnout too, right? It's like you're saying that motivation to train is low. And yeah, it's, I can't even imagine, but I do kind of, the other kind of, I guess, somewhat not quite as similar scenario, but somewhat similar scenario is conversations with our clients right now that we're having. And for our listeners, we're recording this in kind of mid to end December, is there's kind of that burnout at the end of the year. Like many people have finished kind of their peak race of the season, and all the holidays, travel, family, holiday parties, like people just kind of get a little bit like they need a break. They need a brain break. Right. And so I think you brought up some good points. It's like finding that thing for you that gives you that true brain relaxation. And like for you, yes, maybe sitting on the couch watching TV relaxed the body, but the brain needed that outdoor nature, fresh air. I personally, I'm very similar. I am such a better person if I can get outside and walk my dog and just like listen to the birds and look at the colors and like, just simple stuff that, and there's plenty of research on that too, right? It's just how good being outside is for us. So yeah, I think you bring up a really fantastic point there. And yeah, communicating with your friends and family and finding a specialist, I think, is also a fantastic tool. You also mentioned too, some things as you were telling your Olympic story, is you're mentioning these, like you saw you looked at the wins, right? Is like you were pulling those wins from that situation instead of maybe focusing on the lows or the cons or whatever. And I think that's a big thing too, if you can shift that mindset a little bit to focus on that silver lining and kind of maybe help get you through a little bit of it as well. So
exactly. I think that like whole process journey part, like it's such a cliche, people say all the time, and maybe actually it's not even a cliche, it's just truth at the end of the day. It's like that process and that journey is really what's worth it at the end of the day. Like yes, being at the Olympics and that feeling of racing there, and everything that kind of came with it was incredible. But that entire process of getting there was what really like defined me, and what really like gave me all these amazing people in my life and lessons and kind of ups and downs that I think made that journey so beautiful. Regardless of like how we perform, because the race is like 49, 50 seconds, like you're done in less than a minute, right? So it has to be the journey and everything else that's worth it, because if you're putting all that weight on 50 seconds, like you're going to set yourself up for disappointment, right? And I think that goes for anything in life, right? Whether it's a huge presentation and work that you've been working on for 2 years, like it has to be the work that you're doing leading up to it that is like fulfilling and is part of that journey rather than the end result.
Yeah, definitely. So you mentioned something there too with your sport, 40 seconds, 50 seconds, and it's over. I think having you on as a guest is really great for our listeners, because we definitely have a lot of endurance based athletes. We have people doing 100+ mile bike races and ultra marathons and ultra trail and all that stuff. And I think putting that in perspective to the duration of the actual event is this short stint of time. And I'm sure your training sessions are longer than 40 seconds. I will guarantee that. So I would love to kind of dive into with you, what does nutrition look like for you, kind of maybe in the lead up to maybe prepping for training versus prepping for a race that's short and fast like that?
Yeah, definitely. I would say like the nutrition doesn't vary that much between a race day and like a training day. I would say maybe sure on a race day, I'm not eating like as big of a lunch or something as I would, just because the race is that close. But for the most part, I always like my breakfast is my favorite part and like the biggest thing, no matter whether I'm training or racing. I always have like really like what I call like my loaded oats that are just like everything you can put into oatmeal. I do like nuts, bananas, peanut butter, like just like everything. And then
I love it.
Toast, coffee, even like a smoothie or a shake with collagen or protein powder in it as well. Those types of things. And then on race day, just making sure that I have like a sandwich that both has like a little bit of protein, a little bit of carb before I race. And then after the race, I feel like normally just refueling. It doesn't have to be right away, but like enough and closer to afterward where I can recover for the next day or next type of thing. So it doesn't vary that much, I would say.
I love everything you just said too, by the way, those loaded oats, sandwich. So I think kind of to a point to get across to the listeners is, in a sport like that, you're moving fast, and the faster and the higher intensity we are moving, the more reliant we are on glycogen. But even for something so a race like that, yes, glycogen probably comes into play maybe at some point, but you're really actually probably relying a lot on your initial like creatine phosphate stores too. Is that kind of, it leads to the supplement conversation, but is there any supplements that you use or found helped your performance?
Yeah, I mean, I think supplements have been super helpful for me. I think one of the things when I had my bone injury, I upped my vitamin D intake a lot to just help promote kind of some of that bone healing, and even just use natural sources. Like I did a lot of bone broth, like just tried to get a lot of like collagen and just things when I was in that injury mode as well. But in training, and especially in the fall, I do take creatine to help with that as well. Take a multivitamin, I take iron, because I know for runners, a lot of times our iron can get pretty low. I have had low iron in the past, so I just take it consistently to kind of make sure that those iron levels are high and I have good energy and I'm not fatigued in that regard. So those are the main ones that I take as well.
That's awesome. Do you, with regards to iron, I think that's definitely a popular area, and an area where we do see when we get lab work from our athletes, some of them can be very low in ferritin and iron. What were some of the symptoms that you noticed before, or I guess upon realizing like maybe I'm low? What kind of led you to that?
Yeah. Luckily we had blood work
Oh,
close to when I
good,
started realizing it. So I didn't feel like I hit a wall that hard in terms
good.
of, but I know one of the things I did feel is just increased fatigue. Like
Yeah.
I could not finish workouts the way
Mm,
that I feel like I was before or
yeah.
normally would. And I was sort of questioning, like, why am I so fatigued? Like, why can't I kind of get through the end of this workout? So that was a big one for me. But luckily we were able to have blood work kind of routinely at that point.
That's
Um,
awesome.
to where we caught it relatively early before I feel like I hit that wall. But for some of
Yeah.
your athletes, what have been some of the signs?
I mean, we will see. Well, I will tell you one story, which was shocking to me. We had an athlete come to us and she just wanted to check her like general labs just to see like where she was at. And her ferritin,
Oh
I
no.
think it was at like a 6, like, which is like
Yeah.
in many instances is eligible for an iron transfusion. And I was like, do you feel any of these symptoms like fatigue, headache, like any of these things? And she's like, no, I feel great. I'm like, wait, what? So I think that kind of also, I mean, maybe she's always ran naturally low. We didn't have additional lab work, to see what her past history was. So maybe that's just kind of her normal. And hopefully in bringing those levels up, she'll feel even better, But typically we will see kind of what you mentioned is like, even though they're fueling accordingly, there's this just kind of like, I don't want to say out of gas, but it's just,
Mm.
there's that consistent low energy. And even when they do recover or they take a couple days of rest, they're still low energy. It's not like they feel like they fully recovered. And
Definitely.
so that's definitely one of the things we'll try and pay attention to. But I think too, from an endurance athlete perspective or an athlete perspective in general, I mean, we know that every time you exercise, there's that upregulation in hepcidin, which basically blunts iron absorption for, the study showed at least 6 hours out is that elevation. So if you're trying to take an iron supplement or you're, I don't know, loading up on a bunch of spinach and ground beef or something like that for your iron sources, it's possible that hepcidin elevation is interfering with that. And just because of exercise and then we lose a little bit of iron via sweat, which I think people don't realize either. But yeah, so I think getting those labs checked is a good call. And then if you can find a supplement too that works well for your stomach, sometimes different forms of iron can be problematic for some athletes as well. And timing that accordingly. With the creatine, was that a noticeable difference with your performance, or is it kind of like, I'll take it because I know the research shows it, but I didn't necessarily notice a huge difference? Or what was that like for you?
Yeah, I think my nutritionist, like I said it well, this woman named Jessalyn, who I've worked with from Athletics Canada,
Okay.
amazing. She talked to me about how a lot of times with these supplements that are NSF certified, that are like third party tested and everything, if you can feel a large difference, that like probably means they're a banned substance, right? So I think that's a good way of thinking about it, that like any of these
Yeah.
supplements that you're taking are going to make like less than a 2% difference. So for me taking creatine, I can't feel that big of a difference when I like finish a lift or finish a workout or finish a sprinting session. Yeah, I think that's kind of the short answer of like, I
Yeah.
don't feel that big of a difference. I'm sure that it is helping in some way because of all the research and because of like the timing of when I'm taking it and those types of things that you sort of can work through and figure out what's
Yeah.
best for your body. But I think, yeah, I don't feel too big of a difference, which makes sense given the
Yeah.
fact that they're making such a small percentage change to be a legal supplement for us to take for high
Totally.
performance.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's a great point there too, is like the reason why things like that are legal is because they're not making that big of a difference, right? It's that 1 to 2%
Yeah.
improvement in maybe performance. So yeah, I think that's a great point. And you mentioned NSF certified for sport. So if the listeners don't know what that is a third party company pulling that product from the shelf, making sure that there's not banned substances in it. And there's NSF for sport, there's informed choice, and informed sport. Those are things you can look for on your product labels too, when you're looking for supplements. So I did want to dive into with you to the conversation kind of a little bit with regards to mental health as well, kind of moving on that conversation, but the conversation around body image and definitely female athletes. I would say even some of our male athletes maybe
Yeah.
have a similar outlook too, but just the maybe seeing these maybe professional athletes at that level and almost kind of just assuming like, well, to get to that level, surely I have to be that size or that weight. Can you tell us like about your thoughts on that? Is there, if you struggled with that yourself, or do you find that any of your teammates had, had struggled with stuff like that?
Yeah, 100%. I think it's such a big issue in
Mhm.
not only the running world in our sport, but just in any sport or just in life in general, especially with the rise of social media and how challenging that can
Oh
be
yeah.
and social comparison. Like I know, especially for the younger generation, you're just looking and seeing all these athletes or older girls or older guys
Yeah.
who look this certain way and are performing a certain way. I think I really struggled with it when I came to Duke initially, because I mean, you're 17, 18 years old when you come into this environment, and then you're training with 22, 23-year-olds who have so many more years of elite training under their belt. And so of course they have more muscle definition. They've just worked longer. Like they're not kind of in that almost later stage of puberty as well, where your body's still figuring out what's going on. And so I immediately kind of compared myself of like, why don't I have like the abs? Why am I not looking like as strong or as fit or as lean as these older athletes are? And it just took time. And again, working with kind of nutritionists and talking with other female athletes about it to get to the point of like, all of our bodies are different. And just because we look a certain way or someone looks a certain way doesn't mean that your body isn't super strong or can't perform or can't do the incredible things that you have it do on a daily basis. So I think that like kind of health doesn't equal what we look like in that regard for athletes. So I think that was the biggest thing. And you mentioned earlier before we started recording, that sort of lighter is faster mentality in track can be so challenging and so just like detrimental, because sure, like at first those people are running fast times because they're quote unquote lighter, and then they have all the injuries and overuse stuff, all the challenges that come with that of not fueling enough and not kind of allowing your body to recover in the way that it needs to. So it's definitely been a challenge for me, but it's one that over the years, trying to not socially compare, working with a nutritionist, understanding that my body is different and unique and going to look very different to the 400-meter runner next to me, even though we're the same event, we look completely different. So that's okay.
Yeah. I think that's a good message for people. And did you ever feel like in your career, like when you first got to Duke, comparing yourself to the older athletes there, did that ever translate into how you were using nutrition? Did you ever feel like you needed to decrease your energy intake to be lighter, or what was that like? Is that ever an issue?
Yeah, I think especially towards the second half of my freshman year, I think also because eating changes when you're in college. You just have access to different foods than you're used to at home.
Totally.
Whether it's like recovery shakes more so after. So I honestly gained a good amount of weight coming into Duke because we were lifting more. I was eating a lot more. I also was going out a bit here and there as a college student.
As you should.
as you know, some balance here and there. So I gained a good amount of weight, and in the spring I kind of panicked of like, oh no. So I definitely started to eat a little bit more restrictively. Luckily not to the point that was super detrimental to me, and to a point where I think I kind of was able to catch it before it got to an unhealthy point. But I think that is definitely a commonality for a lot of Duke athletes, not even just Duke. I don't want to say Duke because it's not Duke. It's just a lot of college athletes, elite athletes in general. It's definitely not just Duke, but I think that was sort of my experience that does mirror, I think, a lot of athletes as well.
Definitely. When you started to notice those habits, was that something did you guys have a sports nutritionist at Duke that was helping you, or did you reach out to anybody at that time for kind of thoughts or ideas or support?
At that time, there was a sports nutritionist at Duke. It wasn't super connected within the athletics realm as it is now at Duke. They have an incredible sports nutrition program now where they have people for each sport, and it's very integrated. Back then it wasn't as much. So at the time I was just sort of trying to figure it out on my own. Still trying to fuel, but maybe just eating less than I probably should have. So I think now, as an elite athlete, talking to my nutritionist from Athletics Canada, and then even the resources at Duke, and that I know a lot of other institutions are implementing, it's way better in giving like actual adequate advice to athletes And then even on Voice in Sport as well, like having all the experts there that these girls can talk to get real advice instead of social media fads or dieting or things like that aren't really healthy for that specific athlete or that specific person.
Definitely. Yeah. And for our listeners, if you're not familiar with Voice in Sport we will link it in the show notes. I forget the age cutoff. Is it 20?
Yeah, 23. I think it's 13.
Okay.
23. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So it's a resource for 13 to 23-year-old females athletes. And it's pretty incredible. They get access to sports nutritionists, psychologists, therapists, people like Maddy, professional athletes. They get FaceTime, and it's a pretty incredible resource for people or young girls who, could maybe use some extra tools from the elders, I guess, if you will. Yeah. Exactly. But yeah, I love what Steph's trying to do with Voice in Sport. I think it's a great mission. So we'll link down the show notes for the listeners. If you guys have daughters in sports and stuff like that and want to give them a resource, definitely check that out. So kind of talking about nutrition, you shared your breakfast, your lunch, all that stuff. How do you kind of go about your day-to-day nutrition right now? Are you more of like, do you know you need to get like certain amounts, and so you make sure you get those things, or are you more relying on kind of natural hunger cues, or what does that look like on kind of varying training days for you?
Yeah. I would say right now, I like my schedule since moving back to North Carolina. I moved to Austin for about a year and moved back to North Carolina, has been all over the place. So it's just been now reestablishing a routine over the last couple months to where I can make sure I'm having consistent meals. So one of the things I am working on is that consistency. And we kind of made the plan of, okay, Wednesday morning, I have some time. So that's going to be my morning where I like look at recipes or what I'm going to make for meal prep, right? So that's like kind of the research day-ish, right? Thursday morning, I'll go grocery shopping because that's my normally like recovery day. So I have that morning free. Sunday, I will be able to meal prep and cook for the next week. So actually having that scheduled is so helpful, because sometimes I'll put it in my brain. I'm like, oh yeah, I'll meal prep and I'll grocery shop on Sunday. And then life happens, something will come up, you won't. And then I don't have, like, I'm kind of scrambling in the middle of the week to make sure I have a good lunch before my practice. Yeah. But that's been a big one, is actually scheduling in the time to cook and to grocery shop and to do those things. But otherwise with fueling, it's a mix of going off of hunger cues and then a mix of knowing that before my practice and after my practice, I know that I need to have like adequate meals and protein and like kind of that type of thing after a good complex carb before, those types of things. So I think it's a good mix right now.
I think I love that. And the blocking out time to food prep, even like just the brainstorm ideas of recipes, I think that's a great idea, because I think people get stuck into maybe like, Taco Tuesday is not always a bad thing, but like having tacos every Tuesday, some people can get burned out on it. But coming up with new recipes, do you have are you just hitting up Google, or do you have a recipe book you go to, or where do you get these cool recipes?
Yes, that's a great question. There's a couple different like websites or places that I go. One that I do like is the Modern Proper online. They have a bunch of good recipes.
Awesome.
And then one of the cookbooks that I like am asking for Christmas, but that my friend has sent me other recipes from, is the Run Fast, Eat Slow. And then I think it's the Cook Fast one. So there's a couple different versions of those. Yes. But I think the Cook Fast one in particular, for someone like me, or just in general, busy people don't have a lot of time, having the Cook Fast one is huge. So it's the shorter recipes. And then even just things like that, I've talked with my nutritionist about, of like she giving me some ideas of a lunchtime snack or an in-between training snack, things like that.
Awesome. Yeah. We have the Run Fast, Cook Fast, Eat Slow. And then we just bought the Rise and Run, I think was the other one they just came out with. Awesome. The Run Fast, Cook Fast, we'll shout them out and tag them in the show notes for our listeners. Their chili was on our Sunday meal prep like almost every week. We were obsessed with it. So good. It's like especially this time of year. And then love the turkey meatballs. And then they have a really good cabbage slaw recipe in there for tacos. So good. So highly recommend. Hopefully your friend gets it for you for Christmas. Fingers crossed. That's I love that one as well. Very an excellent one. And then we'll link the Modern Proper too in the show notes for those.
They have a great like stuffed peppers one that has like
Ooh,
quinoa and ground turkey and black beans in
I
stuffed
love
peppers. I
it.
do it with poblano peppers because I think they have a little bit more fun flavor than bell
Yeah.
peppers. So it's a good
Oh,
one.
that's great. Yeah. I love that. And all of those things you're talking about are all super nutrient dense stuff. So I think that's helpful for the listeners to hear too. I think there can be a time and a place for maybe the quick digesting sports foods and stuff like that. But also making sure we get the nutrient dense and the colors in, I think is a big thing that's just going to help with that muscle tissue recovery and immune system and all those things. So get your colors in your diet too, and not from Swedish fish, but like from fruits and veggies. Swedish fish, you can use this on the bike or something like that. Yeah, I love that. So let's see what you're training for the 2024 Olympics. So what does a weekly kind of training schedule look like for you right now?
Yeah, so it's kind of fall is definitely differs from when we're in full season in the spring. So right now we normally have like sprint track sessions Monday, Wednesday, Friday, Saturday.
Okay.
And those Tuesday, Thursday, at least for me, since I've had kind of past injuries and stuff, those are more swim, bike, or maybe sort of a grass run on like a
Nice.
Tuesday.
Yeah.
And then we will lift Monday, Friday. And those lifts are normally like kind of power Olympic lifts. So your hang cleans, power cleans, squats, front squats. We do like step ups with the bar on our back.
That's awesome.
Snatches, just kind of different complex movements like that.
That's great.
And then certain correctives to make sure like those hamstrings are strong, glutes are firing, all that type of stuff. So we have a good training group out here. We have 6 of us that are post-collegiate pro athletes. So it's been nice to have an awesome training group out here in North Carolina to kind of work off each other, support each other. And it's great to be in that environment.
That's awesome. And the strength piece, how do you tend to do that? Like what, every week of the year, or is that something that you, yeah,
we're lifting like pretty much
awesome.
every week of the year. I think
I love
when
it.
we get into season, like later on when we're racing, and so we're traveling from like that Thursday to Sunday, so that Friday lift kind of gets removed. But on like a Wednesday, maybe we'll do a little bit more of an explosive lift. So whether that's just like a speed bench to sort of get the nervous system firing,
Nice.
or just some like kind of plyos or something to get the nervous system going instead of a heavier lift that we would do on that Friday. Like the fall, I would say our base season is way more kind of heavier lifts to build the strength. When we're in race season, it's more just kind of maintaining that strength that we've built and keeping the explosiveness going.
I see. Yeah, that's great. I in working with a lot of athletes, I think sometimes we get the messaging from them that the type of training they're doing, they do it because they like it. But then they do want to change body composition, but they don't have time. Many of them don't have time to fit in strength training, or if the coach is programming it, it's maybe during their like postseason block and then it's gone after that. So I think you bring up a great point where it's right now. I mean, it sounds like you strength train primarily twice a week and are able to, How long are your strength training sessions?
They kind of vary. Since there's 6 of us, they definitely run a little bit longer, like because we'll have 3 to a rack, like there's 3 girls, 3 guys. So we'll be in there for like about an hour, I would say. But I think if we really were to be on our own, each person do a weight rack, it would go a little bit quicker for sure. But I think just really focusing on form and making sure we're lifting safely. And we do try and push weight right now in the fall. So like kind of getting video and looking at how all of our movements are looking is also why I think it takes that time, which is good because it's, it's a full-time job for us as pro athletes, so we can take that time and we need to take that time. But I get how if you're not, then that's hard to fit that in sometimes. But even just smaller little correctives or small strength movements, even if it's just body weight at home, I think can still make a big difference for people.
Yeah, I think that's great. So we didn't get to dive into detail on the post-training nutrition since we're talking about training sessions. What does that immediate post-nutrition look like for you? Is it a meal, shake? What's your go-to?
Yeah, I would say normally I will have, sometimes it'll be a shake with like protein powder. Either sometimes I'll do creatine before or after. I'm kind of like working that out with my nutritionist right now.
Nice.
But normally I'll come home and make like a big meal. I like even breakfast for like lunch. So I'll have my oats in the morning before practice. And then after our session, I'll make like 2 eggs, whether it's bacon or turkey bacon or hash browns are like 2 pieces of toast as well, that kind of thing. And then sometimes they're scramble with other veggies as well. So normally that's like my go-to. If
I
not,
love it.
make a
Yeah.
sandwich or
Breakfast works, I feel like, for any meal of the
any meal.
day.
I just
Yeah.
love it. It's perfect. And
It
then hot
is so
dogs, of
good.
course. Throw that on
Yeah.
there. Good to go.
Awesome. I love that. So we got your training kind of idea going on. Or do you do any kind of local races in the lead up as kind of practice exposure for the Olympics, or what does that look like for you?
Yeah, for us, luckily there has been a lot more US meets that are kind of at the high level professional level because of the American Track League, which was started last year. So because of that, there will be races this year in Florida. There's some in Texas. I'll definitely be going to some in North Carolina. I think if I can stay local and drive to some of those meets. There's a big one out in California called Mount Sac Relays. So fingers crossed to that one. So it's just kind of a mix, but a lot of the high level meets are in Europe on some of the professional like world tour and diamond League meets out there. So hopefully we'll be able to go race in Europe again this spring, which is always an amazing experience because people love track out there, and they put on, they have like beer gardens and music, and it's just like a really cool environment that I think we don't necessarily have at track meets here in the US. For like specific track stuff. I think a lot of the distance stuff in the US is incredible. There's so many amazing marathons and environments to be in, and then some of the more distance endurance events. But I think on the track and sprint side, it's been a challenge in the US to have that same energy and environment. So it's cool to get over to Europe and feel that.
Yeah. So kind of talking about international travel, how do you go about your nutrition if you are going somewhere else? Do you bring your kind of go-tos with you in the suitcase that you can, or are you trying to find similar equivalents there?
Yeah, I pack so many snacks, like half my carry-on. It's like when we went to Tokyo, half my carry-on was snacks. And I think it's we were prepared for it. When we landed in Tokyo, we had a 9-hour wait in the airport just to process everybody from COVID, and then a 6-hour bus ride. So that's like so many hours just even when you land before you get to the hotel. So you just have to be prepared to have fuel and snacks with you. A good friend of mine who's a Canadian Olympian and world champion in beach volleyball, Melissa Humana-Paredes, she has started this thing called her snack corner. Like if you follow her on Instagram, it's awesome. She like brings all her snacks with her, obviously, to her tournaments and events, but puts them in this corner and like lays them all out so she can like see them and shares them. And it's just a fun way to be like, look at all the awesome snacks I have.
I love
bring
that.
them that way. So I love her snack corner as well.
That's amazing. You sound like me. I just did a work trip to Texas a couple of weeks ago, and I had a backpack filled with all kinds of, you name it. I even brought fresh apples. I brought dried mangoes. I brought like all the things. And it came in handy because I was prepared. And then the rest of the people who I was traveling with were like, oh man, I'm so hungry. And like, it's like, check out my snack bag, so if you can come prepared, I think it comes in favor, in your favor for sure, especially if you ever, my GI is a little sensitive, but like, so if you can get that stuff that, works for you, I think that's huge, and bring it along. So I want to be mindful of your time. Where can people, well, actually, before we do that, 2 truths and a lie. We got to do the reveal.
Okay, so your guess was which one?
The Bernese mountain dogs. There's something that's a lie.
That's the lie. That's the lie. Yeah, okay. I only have one. I don't have 3. I do have one. Her name is Brooklyn, but I don't have 3. So maybe one day we'll get there, but we do need more space because they are big. So
amazing. And so you did almost pee your pants then when you saw Alice and Felix. And then you have a 1973 Alfa Romeo in your garage.
I do. Yeah. It was one of the cars that my dad had, and we were able to keep it even after he passed. And so it's a cool way to get to drive it and kind of feel close to him and connect with him in that way. So it's nice to have it here in North Carolina and drive it. My mom had it in San Francisco where she lives, and those hills with a very old stick car is just a bit of a nightmare. So it was awesome we were able to get it out here so that we can drive it, and
that's good.
Flat roads out here. So
that's super fun. Oh my goodness. That's great. So where can people find you, follow you, all that stuff?
Awesome. Yeah. So my Instagram and my TikTok handle are the same, and they are Maddy Priceless. So MADDY PRICE and then LESS, Maddy Priceless. My website is maddyprice.net. Just has a little bit about me, a little bit about speaking, mentorship, all the above. And then hopefully I'm trying to start a little newsletter on LinkedIn in the new year. So my
Cool.
LinkedIn is just Maddy Price. I think there's an OLY next to it as well, for Olympic, but yeah.
Awesome. Cool. Well, and then we'll also link Voice in Sport too for our younger ladies if they want to check out Maddy on Voice in Sport. Thank you so much, Maddy, for joining us today. This was fantastic.
Thank you for having me. This was incredible.